Okay, I think we're recording. Good evening, Bicycle Advisory Committee. This is Kyle Cook, Salt Lake City Transportation Division. One of the reasons I love my job is I'm always learning. And today I'm learning how to do a video cast. Because I know tonight I've committed to giving you guys some project updates, and I also realized I've got to take my son to his baseball practice. So I'm going to be sitting in a car during the meeting, waiting for that practice to be over, and it's going to be much easier if I can record this content in advance and then be available for questions and discussion just sort of over the phone. So forgive the rough edges. I'm still getting used to the workflow here, but also thinking that doing some of these recorded presentations could be a good way to kind of increase our reach as we're doing more project promotion. People hate to read, but maybe they can tolerate a little bit of a video of me talking. So kind of trying this out and piloting what we may try to do for other project outreach. Okay, so of the projects that I brought to you guys last time we talked, which was in October of 2020, the 600-700 North Corridor study is one of those. And I'm going to borrow a slide deck here to show you a couple things that we've been sharing with community councils. This is from the West Point that we talked with just last week. Also been presenting to others in the area. Big picture, as far as the course of the study, that initiated in spring of last year, and we're basically nearing the completion of the study element. So obviously once the study's done, there's still a lot of work to do to implement, but right now we're really trying to set the trajectory and kind of bookend the type of investments that we want to see on the corridor moving forward. And I expect those improvements will be built to some degree in phases. So the projects may be compartmentalized. You might see an intersection improvement over here, or a new mid-block crossing over there, as opposed to a complete corridor reconstruction, which we'd love to do, but obviously that's an extremely expensive approach to making improvements along a corridor like this. So right now we're in the process of promoting the project. We've got a story map out. This is fresh and current content, as well as a survey to gauge people's responses. So we've got these kind of big picture ideas that I'll share with you here in a second. But the survey is open till the end of March. It's been open since the beginning of February, so we have kind of a elongated comment period, and it's bilingual. So we're making an extra special effort to make sure people have the time to speak their piece and can access it in Spanish as well. So I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the content that we have for your information, and it'd be great, obviously, for you to take the survey. You're welcome to share your questions and concerns directly with me, and tell your friends, tell people that you think would be interested. Word of mouth is always a great way to get the word out. So SLC.gov transportation /600 North. We've got our general website up here with the trail of breadcrumbs of documenting the project process, as I mentioned. And then here's our survey map, which is embedded in the website. So you can click this button, which I recommend to do, to take it into a new browser tab, so you get just a little bit more elbow room as you're navigating the space. We have each of the concepts shown across the top in tabs. So concept 1, what we're calling our baseline with enhancements. Give that just a second for the images to load. And we get a nice plan view section here. This is what we call our baseline. This is kind of the option that's got something that everyone can like, in the sense that it maintains vehicle travel lanes in each direction, but it does rededicate a lot of the street space to things like a buffered bike lane, transit stops. In this graphic, we're showing in-lane transit stops. Obviously, right now we don't have transit service running up and down the corridor. That's coming in fall of 22, which, just as a quick side note, that was delayed due to budget shortfalls related to the impact of the COVID pandemic. So while transit service that we've envisioned on the corridor is going to be delayed, it's still coming, and we're still excited about it. So baseline with improvements shown here. We've got some nice visuals, and I think the video should be coming through. This is taking that plan view rendering and creating a three-dimensional fly-through. So this shows on-street parking, curbside, which we think will be important for a lot of people since it does have so much residential directly fronting the corridor, particularly between 8th West and Redwood Road. Mid-block crossings are something that we'd like to see more of along the corridor, perhaps with landscaped medians to add some greenery as well as that pedestrian refuge. Here we're showing how that in-lane bus stop could look. This is pretty consistent with the Typologies street design guide, where it takes the protected or buffered bike lane and runs it alongside the curb to mitigate the conflicts that we oftentimes see when buses have to cross across the bike lane to access a curbside stop. Okay, and I'll just walk you through some of the other features that are within each one of these. Is vertically scroll, and this content is kind of custom tailored to each concept. So again, we're in concept one. We're showing different streetscape amenities that might be specific to this particular concept, but some of these are broadly applicable too, right? So additional park strip trees, some bulb out landscaping, micromobility elements, even just some basic artistic wraps for signal controller cabinets can start to make a difference and create some identity and just some nice aesthetic upgrades to the area. The I-15 interchange is something that we've heard a lot about. In reality, these options in and around the interchange are sort of independent of what we do along the whole of the corridor. And this is because it's not a city facility. This is a UDOT facility, and so we're outlining different ways we might like to see changes to that interchange, and working with UDOT to realize those. And now I'm kind of getting lost a little bit here, but one thing I'll show you is you can click on these concepts and vertically scroll to a window pane where the concepts are side by side, and it's a little easier to visualize what the difference is between the alternatives. So with I-15 and 6 North, it sort of follows the pattern of least intervention to most intervention, where we're looking at doing some modest sidewalk improvements. This option actually looks at modifying the radius of the curve to make it to discourage speeding around that corner, and then the third option would be to add an additional bike lane on the north side and potentially some path-like crossings at the ramps. So let's see. I'm getting a little lost here. Let me go back to vertically scrolling through concept one, some ideas for 8th North, and some visuals of a key activity area near the Backman Elementary and Riverside Park. We did little vignettes in and around this area because we feel like it's such an important element of the corridor. It's a big destination locally and regionally, and it's got a lot of nice civic uses. And so for each one of the concepts, we did sort of an illustration of how that might look and interact and interface with the surrounding land uses there at the park. So let's step through concept 2 briefly. So this is definitely a more transformative approach, where we'd actually reduce the number of vehicle lanes in each direction. Now that's in and of itself is resulted in a lot of concerns expressed through our survey and otherwise. This corridor is what I'd say is it's kind of in a spot where it can function as a single lane in each direction. It's kind of on the upper threshold of where we'd want to do that. The ADTs that we were seeing around 13, 14,000. So, it's still a very busy street. Reducing the lane in each direction was done last summer for utility work. I think it was, now I'm going to forget who was the utility company doing a gas pipe replacement project in the center median. And they had lane closures down to one lane. And, we were out there watching it and people get through just fine. So, this is an example where there's, a little bit of a misconception that you need two vehicle lanes in each direction to get traffic through, and that's not really the case. Signals and intersections are always going to be the bottleneck in terms of vehicle flow on a corridor, and so as long as we can maintain our intersections working well and having left and right turn lanes, going to a one lane in each direction on this corridor is definitely doable, as we've again observed through some of the utility work. So what do we get with that extra space? In this graphic, we're showing a larger landscaped center median, which creates visually more greening, opportunity for mid-block crossings, general traffic calming. It really would have a pretty dramatic impact on the look and the feel of the corridor. Okay, I'm going to pause there for 1 second. Okay, and then the third concept is this street side park concept. So this is probably applicable for shorter segments near Riverside Park. I don't think we'd envision doing this in really long segments or along the entire corridor. But it creates a space, that sort of extends that park node, creates a space for people to walk and gather. We would be able to incorporate a separated bike path into this area or into this repurposed street space. The road cross section is transformed into one travel lane in each direction. And thinking about how residents would access their homes, we'd look at doing some kind of street frontage road or something like that. So, obviously it's a little bit more radical, but we wanted to kind of think outside the box and think creatively about what to do with some of these really wide streets, particularly in the Fair Park and West Side communities where we have these very expansive pavement cross sections, and just trying to think creatively about what could be done here. So again, just kind of the fly through graphic showing that plaza space, how that separated bike path could integrate in with work with the transit stations. Yeah, and then last, but very importantly, we've got our survey mechanism here. So we're doing surveys in English and in Spanish. This is just kind of a quick glance. Let's see at how that looks. It's not a long survey. We're mostly just asking folks to rank their preferences, give us some open-ended feedback about what they like, what their priorities are, and asking for some specific input on the use of temporary or quick build materials. And this was inspired a little bit by the experience we had on 6th North and 12th West back in November, where we felt like that was a pretty successful implementation and just generally promoting the idea of investing on the corridor. Interestingly, a lot of the feedback that we got wasn't particularly favorable towards the temporary materials, soft hip posts, Even just the level of permanence. Some people felt like it wasn't out there long enough for them to really even adjust to it being there. And so, this is trying to get a little bit more insight into that question of do we, try to build a few signature projects or try to spread the wealth around a little bit more, potentially using less durable or less permanent materials. So it'll be interesting to see how this comes back. Right now we're tracking at around 350 completed comments, which is great. That's actually more than we had last summer when we were doing the sort of initial open-ended comment period. So, but that's great. But please take the survey, share the survey. We're looking at wrapping this project up, fairly soon. And again, this is wrapping up the study. The study sets the trajectory for the direction of the investment. We want to have the vision, so as we're doing things moving forward, we're doing phasing that's sensible and goes towards the ultimate build and doesn't result in throwaway work. Okay, and that's what I have for 6 North. Pause. Okay, and I'm looking at the timestamp on my video, and I'm 16 minutes in, which is bad because I obviously wasn't very efficient with the time I had. Only talked about one project, so let's go fast now. Let's talk 200 South. I've got the web browser on the project page. I'm sharing with you an infographic that shows a quick summary of the results of the survey that we conducted last November. Okay, and just to refresh your memory concept, the baseline was more or less in-lane bus stops with some good things, mid-block crossings, those sort of things, but not otherwise providing designated priority to the transit as done in concept 2, where we basically define the outer lane as business access and transit priority lanes, so BAT lanes. Again, driveways can turn in and out of these. They're not restricted with curb, but they're so they can be temporarily used by vehicles accessing the curbside parking or that sort of thing, but are otherwise supposed to be for the primarily used by bus transit. And then in concept 3 was placing those transit lanes center running. So where we ended up, again, there's lots of considerations that go into this. And I think a lot of people will be interested to see, sort of how we arrived at the solution that we're moving forward with. But, the punchline is side running transit lanes make a ton of sense for this corridor. Provides us a lot of opportunity to do the walking and biking improvements that people really liked about the project and liked about the center running transit. But what ultimately is really important to keep in mind is that we have a lot of buses using this corridor. What I'm showing on my screen now is an infographic summary where this came into more clarity with the publication of the UTA 5-year plan, where we have a lot of bus activity on the corridor. The busiest block between West Temple and 200 East during, over on the daily basis, we'll see over 1,100 vehicle trips per day, and during the peak periods that equates to a bus about every 100 seconds or so. So we have a lot of frequent buses coming through, combined with the fact that these are not buses that just run from one end to the other like the Route 2. We have buses that run on 5th South, buses that run on 9th East. We have buses that run to Sandy. We have, in the future, potentially buses coming on the corridor that from the 5600 South route. We have new frequent transit service that I referenced earlier coming from the Rose Park, Fair Park area on 6th North and 10th North. That'll likely be terminating or running on 200 South for some period of time. And so the nature is that it's kind of a frayed rope. We have lots of routes coming in from all over, converging on this corridor. And so operationally, we need the flexibility for buses to be able to pass each other, for example, that we just cannot get with center running transit. And so for those reasons, the side running configuration works really well. And in this graphic, what we're showing is how those stops could be integrated into a mid-block crossing, where you've got in-lane stops accessed by a mid-block crosswalk, getting people, across the street, getting people to the stations. Lots of details to be worked out, particularly around how we treat the conflict area with the pedestrian crosswalk and our bike lane, where we're bending it behind. And this would be, there's a lot of best practices out there. I know, NACTO is a great guide, and there's other cities that have done this. And so we don't have a lot of precedents here in the state, and so I think we're just trying to think carefully about how we design these, what works good for the project here on 200 South, and how we might use this as a template for other corridors and other bus routes. Just a few other views of how that looks. Okay. So parting words on this one is we're transitioning to final design, where the devil is in the details. We're going to be working out a lot of these questions about how to deal with conflict areas, how to deal with intersections and the right turning conflicts, for example. So more work to come on that. The big picture plan is to have a contractor ready to go for construction in the 2022 construction season. So we're moving pretty quick on this. This is one that's going to be built pretty soon, or be under construction really soon. So we're excited about it, and yeah, more to come on this. In other news, we've got some surface treatments that we're looking at doing. Now this is really common for the city to go through and resurface streets programmatically. Year after year they do this. There's a handful of streets that we're looking at to make some striping modifications. Oftentimes, as in the case of 10th West, 2nd East, for example, these are streets that are in our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, designated as protected bike lanes and are protected separated bikeway facilities. So these are corridors that we're actively looking to think about how we might put back the lane striping after the maintenance activity in the way that we want it. And usually these projects don't come with a lot of capital funds. They're not adding modifications to the curb and gutter. Generally, it's just what we can do with striping or some basic interventions. But this does, lay the groundwork for capital projects to follow. And 200 East, 300 East are both projects that are kind of relevant to our Life on State Bikeways project. So I just wanted to give a quick plug for that. We've updated the website to merge the 6th to 9th South project, the implementation project there, with the Bikeways study. And so we've got really a home for the project. This doesn't have a lot more content on it right now, but we are trying to, talk about the resurfacing of these corridors, also making a connection to the Life on State Bikeways study, particularly for corridors like 200 East and 300 East. There's some other ones on here though. 10th West is one that I've been involved in, and we're looking at what can we do. Last summer we put just a real simple striped buffer on that corridor, and looking for ways that we can go a step further with the resurfacing project that's planned this summer. So one of the things we've talked about actively is doing reconfiguring the street space to accommodate a wider buffered bike lane, something with like 3-foot buffers, 6-foot riding space, and another 3-foot buffer on the other side. So lots of things going on, some long-term visioning, some short-term stuff as well. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thank you, BAC, for your time. Get in touch with any questions.